Well, Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
It is so good to be together and to share in this beautiful moment as Ari is taking his place as an adult within the Jewish community. And Ari, you certainly are a gentleman, and it's a joy to share the Bima with you and to celebrate with you and your dear family. If this is your first time at one of our services and at a Jewish service, I want to just let you know that we are going to be following along in this prayer book that's called a Siddur. You can find it in front of you or maybe beside you. It's a blue book, and Hebrew goes from right to left, so we'll follow going from right to left. And please do feel free to join along in us with the English readings or even to sing along with the Hebrew. The transliteration is on the left side. And as we sit together and think about the beauty of this moment and beauty of joining together in community, we are going to turn to our opening hymn for this Shabbat, which is Ma Tovu, which can be found on page 74. And it is a reading that reminds us that not only is there beauty that comes on the outside of our homes, but there's also an inner beauty, an inner quality as well, that we think of as spiritually beautiful. So this is one of those profound moments of holiness and joy, and so let's sing together in Ma Tovu, page 74.
Ma Tovu, Ma Tovu, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael, Ma Tovu, Ma Tovu, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael, Va'ani berov chastecha, avo veitecha, Eshtacha ve'el hechal kodshecha, be'yiratecha, Ma tovu, Ma tovu, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael, Adonai ahavti, me'on beitecha, u'mekom mishkan kevodecha, va'ani eshtachaber, ve'echra'a, evrecha lifnei Adonai, osi, ma tovu, ma tovu, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael, va'ani tefilati lecha, Adonai et ratzon, Elohim berov chasdecha, Elohim berov chasdecha, Aneni be'emet ishecha, Ma tovu, Ma tovu, Ma tovu, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael.
Moments ago in my study, an ancient and beautiful tradition took place where Ari had the talit of tradition placed on his shoulders for the very first time. And it was a moment that was surrounded by loving family. And Ari, your grandmother Marion made a beautiful comment about how the fabric of your talit represents so much, represents your ancestors and those who walked the earth before you. And that fabric of our lives is so beautifully threaded together by people that we love. And at the bottom of your talit, there are tzitzit. There are these fringes that remind us that when we live our lives doing mitzvot, doing good deeds, and committing ourselves to acts of loving kindness, to making the world a better place, then we make the fabric of our world more whole and more holy. And so it's meaningful that you are wearing this talit that has been now placed on your shoulders. And so on page 88, that's page 88 in our Siddur, we will find a reading that reminds us that when we commit ourselves to certain adult responsibilities, there's not only a reward that it brings sustenance and goodness to others, but there's an intrinsic goodness to them that is in itself rewarding. And now it's meaningful to call Ari forward as he's going to lead us in this beautiful reading on page 88.
These are things that are limitless, of which a person enjoys the fruit of the world, while the principle remains in the world to come. They are honoring one's father and mother, engaging in deeds of compassion, arriving early for study, morning and evening, dealing graciously with guests, visiting the sick, providing for the wedding couple, accompanying the dead for burial, being devoted in prayer, and making peace among people. But the study of Torah encompasses them all,
because it leads to them all. We are now going to turn in our Siddur to page 106. That's page 106. And there you'll find a prayer known as the Hatzi Kaddish. And Ari is going to lead us in this beautiful prayer.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה.
Amen.
בעלמא תברח יוצא ויניח מלכותי בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל. בגלה בגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יחי שמי רבה מבורך, ליום לעולם יום יומיה, יתברך, יתברך וישתבח ויתבר ותרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי תקודשה בריחו, לאילן מן כל בחירתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, Damiran B'yama, Veimeru, Amen.
We now rise together as a congregation as we turn to the call to worship on page 108.
Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
And we continue on page 110.
Praised are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, creator of light and darkness, who makes peace and fashions all things. In mercy, you illumine the world and those who live upon it. In your goodness, you daily renew creation. How numerous are your works, Adonai. In wisdom, you formed them all, filling the earth with your creatures. Be praised, Adonai, our God, for the excellent work of your hands, and for the lights you created. May they glorify you. Shine a new light upon Zion, that we all may swiftly merit its radiance. Praised are you, Adonai, the creator of all heavenly lights. Baruch atah Adonai Yotzer Hamorot.
Amen.
Amen.
And we continue on page 112 with a prayer that reminds us of the love that God holds for each and every one of us. And Ari, I know that when you look out into the congregation, you see eyes of friends and family looking back at you with love and affection and pride, and that's how we experience God's love in the world. It's always important to pause in moments like these and take it all in.
How deeply you have loved us, Adonai, our God, gracing us with surpassing compassion. On account of our forebears who trust led you to teach them the laws of life, be gracious to us, teaching us well. O merciful one, have mercy on us by making us able to understand and discern, to heed, learn, and teach, and lovingly to observe, perform, and fulfill all that is in your Torah. Enlighten our eyes with your Torah, focus our minds on your mitzvot. Unite our hearts in love and reverence for your name. Then we will never feel shame, never deserve rebuke, and never stumble. Having trusted in your great and awesome holiness, we shall celebrate your salvation with joy.
We read together, gather us in peace from the four corners of the earth, and lead us upright to our land. For you, O God, work wonders. You chose us. Truly, you drew us near to your great name, that we might acknowledge you, declaring you one in love. Praised be you, Adonai, who chooses your people, Israel, in love. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher be'amo Israel b'ahava. We turn now to page 114 as we recite the watchword of our faith, the Shema.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Blessed is God's glorious majesty forever and ever.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed.
You may be seated. We continue now on page 116.
You shall love Adonai your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. Take to heart these instructions with which I charge you this day. Impress them upon your children. Recite them when you stay at home and when you are away, when you lie down and when you get up. Bind them as a sign on your hand and let them serve as a symbol on your forehead. Inscribe them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Thus you shall remember to observe all my commandments and to be holy to your God. I am Adonai, your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am Adonai, your God. Adonai Elohechem Emet.
Very good. We are going to continue now as we read responsively on page 121.
The eternal truth is that you alone are God, and there is none else.
May the righteous of all nations
rejoice in your love and exult in your justice. Let them beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Let nation not lift up sword against nation, nor learn war anymore. You shall not hate your brother or your sister in your heart.
The stranger that sojourns with you shall be accepted as your equal, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt.
Why do you crush my people and oppress the poor, asks God.
We know that the Eternal One defends the poor and upholds the rights of the needy.
Praise to God Most High.
Blessed is God and deserving of blessing.
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha ne'edar ba'kodesh, nora tehilot אוסף אלה, שירה חדשה שיבחו גאולים, לשמך על שפת הים, יחד כולם הודו, והמליכו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם. Va'ed Tzur Yisrael Kuma Bezrat Yisrael Ufedechin Umecha Yehuda veYisrael Go Aleinu Adonai Tzevaot Shemo Kidosh Yisrael Baruch Atah Adonai Ga'al Yisrael.
We now turn to page 124 for a series of prayer known as the Tefillah. We rise together now as a community as we have the pleasure of Ari leading us in prayer. Or rather, the cantor leading us in prayer.
Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei Hakol, V'Zocher Chasdei Avot V'Imahot, Umevi Geula Livnei V'Neihem, Lema'an Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer Umoshia Umagen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'Ezrat Sarah. Atah gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechayei hakol atah Rab lehoshia. Mechalkel chaim bechesed, Mechayei hakol berachamim rabim. Somech noflim ve'rofei cholim. Umatir asurim, umekayem emunato, lishenei afar, micha mocha ba'al gevurot, umido melach, melech memit, umechaye, umatzmiach Yeshua, v'ne'eman ata lehachayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, mechaye hakol.
We now read responsively with Ari leading us on page 129.
You are the open door that beckons me in. Peeking around the doorframe, I begin to enter your glory.
You move me forward, O Eternal, to step beyond self-made boundaries. Lift my foot over the thresholds that I might abide with you.
In the house of the Eternal, I found my questions waiting to be posed. They fill me with wonder.
Sit with me, eternal teacher, encourage my seeking. As I fill my hours with your mitzvot, so shall I be filled.
Send me through your door, stretching up to honor your name, sharing out this wonder, enriching myself in the giving. Baruch atah Adonai notea b'tochenu chayei olam.
נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך, וקרא זה אל זה ואמר, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוא כל הארץ כבודו. אדיר אדירנו אדוני אדוננו, מאדיר שמך בכל הארץ. ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו. אחד הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו, הוא מלכנו, הוא מושיענו והוא ישמיענו, ברחמיו לעיני כל חי. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, ימלוך אדוני לעולם. אלוהייך ציון לדור ודור, הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש. ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
You may be seated. We turn to page 132 for Yismechu.
ישמחו ומלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עונג שבת. ישמחו ומלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עונג שבת. מקדשי שביעי שבת כולם ישבעו ויתענגו מטובך שבת. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עונג שבת. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עונג שבת. ובשביעי רצית בו וקידשתו שבת. חמדת ימים אותו קראת זכר למעשה וראשית שבת. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עונג שבת. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עונג שבת.
We turn to page 135 and read responsively. We offer thanks, O God, for this Shabbat, which unites us in faith and hope, for Shabbat holiness, which inspires sacred living, for Shabbat memories glowing even in darkness, for Shabbat peace born of friendship and love. We offer thanks and blessing, O God. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh hashabbat.
רצה אדוני אלוהינו בעמך ישראל ותפילתם באהבה תקבל ותהי לרצון תמיד עבודת ישראל עמך. ברוך אתה אדוני שאותך לבדך ביראה נעבוד.
We turn to page 139 for our Hoda'ah prayer, our prayer of thanksgiving. This morning, there are a lot of things for which we have to be grateful. We can be grateful for the greenery that we can see outside, very vibrant in its color. We can be grateful for the beauty of this sanctuary in which we are praying together. We can be grateful for the beautiful voice of our cantor leading us in prayer this morning. And we are certainly grateful for the young man standing behind me as he becomes bar mitzvah. Sitting behind me, you're right. We are on page 139, and I'll read the paragraphs, and then we'll read Modim Anachnu Lach together. For the expanding grandeur of creation, worlds known and unknown, galaxies beyond galaxies, filling us with awe and challenging our imaginations. Modim Anachnu Lach. For this fragile planet Earth, its times and tides, its sunsets and seasons. Modim Anachnu Lach. For the joy of human life, its wonders and surprises, its hopes and achievements. Modim Anachnu Lach. For human community, our common past and future hope, our oneness transcending all separation, our capacity to work for peace and justice in the midst of hostility and oppression. Modim anachnu lach. For high hopes and noble causes, for faith without fanaticism, for understanding of views not shared. Modim anachnu lach. For all who have labored and suffered for a fairer world, who have lived so that others might live in dignity and in freedom. Modim anachnu lach. For human liberties and sacred rights, for opportunities to change and grow, to affirm and choose. Modim anachnu lach. We pray that we may live not by our fears, but by our hopes, not by our words, but by our deeds. Blessed are you, Adonai, your name is goodness, and you are worthy of thanksgiving. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha ulecha na'eh lehodot. We turn to page 140 for Sim Shalom, our prayer for peace.
Sim Shalom, Tova uvracha, chen v'chesed, v'rachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael amecha. Barucheinu Yotzreinu, Barucheinu Yotzreinu, Kulanu ke'echad be'or panecha. Panecha natata lanu Adonai Eloheinu Torot chaim ve'ahavat chesed u'tzedakah uveracha verachamim v'chaim v'shalom v'tov be'einecha levarech et amcha Yisrael b'chol eit ובכל שעה בשלומך, ברוך אתה אדוני המברך את עמו ישראל בשלום.
With that prayer for peace echoing in our minds, we take a moment now for silent prayer for the prayers in your heart.
עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, Yaseh shalom, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל.
Well, Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
We are going to now turn to page 244 for our Torah service for Seder Kriyat HaTorah. And Ari knows that one of the centerpieces of our service is when he is going to take the Torah from the Ark and he's going to carry it amidst the community as a symbol that the Torah and all of its values and stories really is for everyone. It's not just something that we keep up here for the officiants. And so when Ari walks past you, you can reach out with a siddur, or if you have a talit with your tzitzit, and touch the Torah and kiss it. It's a beautiful tradition. He's going to be walking in sort of a figure eight pattern. And when we were talking about it just this week, Ari right away knew that an 8 on its side is a symbol of infinity. And the idea is that all of these beautiful values that are being passed from generation to generation in Ari's family, they are being passed in a way that speaks to the infinite. And so it's a joy to now call those who are going to be standing at Torah with Ari, who are going to be passing the Torah from generation to generation. It's a joy to call upon Marion Berman, to your grandmother, and Emily Guy Birken and Jamie Birken to stand together with Ari. And Ari, you're going to be standing next to James too. James, you're going to come up here because no time at all, it's going to be your turn to become bar mitzvah here on this bima. In 2 years, that's right. And it's also now a joy to call upon those who are going to have the honor of opening up our Ark doors. It's a joy to call upon Tracy Guy Decker and Diane Birkin as well. And so once again, we turn in our service to page 244 for Seder Kriyat HaTorah. Please rise.
Ein kamocha va'elohim Adonai ve'en kema'asecha malchutecha malchut kol olamim umemshaltecha bechol dor v'ador Adonai melech Adonai malach Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed Adonai oz le'amo yitein Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah Udevar Adonai mirushalayim Baruch shenatan Torah Torah Baruch shenatan Torah Torah le'amo Yisrael bikedushato.
Found within it are the values that have been lifted high and held dear by your family for generations. Values of being creative and thoughtful, kind and generous of spirit. It is a joy now to pass this Torah from the generation of your grandparents to the generation of your parents. And now, Ari, it is being placed on your shoulders where it should remain with good health and much strength. We turn now as we face the congregation and recite the watchword of our faith, the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Gadol Shemo. Gadlu l'Adonai iti, uneromema Shemo yachdav. Lecha Adonai hagedula, v'hagevura, v'hatiferet, v'hanetzach, v'hachol. Kicho bashamayim uvaretz, Kicho bashamayim uvaretz, Lecha Adonai hamamlacha, Vehamitnase lechol rosh. Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, v'tagel haaretz. Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, v'tagel haaretz. Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam umelo. Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam umelo. Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, v'tagel haaretz. Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam umelo. Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam umelo. Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, v'tagel haaretz. Mizmor leDavid, havol Adonai b'nelim, havol Adonai kavod va'oz. Mizmor leDavid, havol Adonai b'nelim, havol Adonai kavod va'oz. Lai 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 lai
You may be seated. Now, moments like these, as we take out the Torah, it's important for us to be able to celebrate it. And part of celebrating it is sharing in Torah as well. And so I know that there are a lot of young people whom this may be their first ceremony, first Jewish service that they've ever been to. And if you have never seen a Torah scroll, I'd like to invite you to come up and to have a look at what Ari is actually going to be reading from. So if you haven't seen a Torah scroll before, and if you've never been to a Jewish service, you're welcome to come on up here. We want to share something with you for just a moment. So come on over. You can stand. You can go and stand with Ari.
On the sides.
So this is our story, this Torah scroll. It's the story of our people and the story of our origins. And there is a story that we teach each and every week as we have bar and bat mitzvah students who come and are able to grow and learn from this Torah scroll. And this Torah scroll was much loved by the community that would gather together and read from it and worship around this Torah. And there was one gentleman that was part of this community that was meeting in Poland that really loved this Torah scroll. It's beautiful. It is light. It's beautifully written. It's the scribe who wrote it must have been really at the height of their craft. And this Torah scroll is roughly about 125 years old, which is not that old, actually, when it comes to Torah scrolls. But he loved this Torah scroll. And so when the German army, when the Nazis amassed upon the Polish border, this gentleman had a sense of what might befall the Jewish community. And so he hid the Torah scroll away. And sure enough, when the Germans entered into Poland, initiating the Second World War, they came to communities like his. They came to his community and took the Jews, just like they did all across the country, to concentration camps and death camps. The man who hid the Torah scroll away was taken to Auschwitz-Birkenau, where life expectancy was a matter of days. But that man was able to survive there until the end of the hostilities when the camp was liberated. And what he must have experienced there must have been horrific. But he survived, and that was a miracle. And he returned to where he had hidden this Torah scroll away, and he brought it to a very small surviving remnant of the Jewish community that was meeting in Warsaw. And for some time, they used this Torah scroll until that remnant became so small, and they moved to places like the United States and Canada and Western Europe and Israel. And so that community became so small that they decided to send the Torah to the United States. And that's when Congregation Shalom learned about it and brought it here to Milwaukee. And the purpose of the Torah scroll being sent to the United States is that it's meant to be used, especially by young people, so that they can grow with a sense of spirituality and enable the spark of hope and liberty and freedom for all humanity to be kindled and continued. And that means that when Ari has carried and reads the Torah amidst our community, it represents not only the hard work that he's done and how he's been able to learn from the Torah, but it represents how every young person, no matter their religion, their race, or nationality, can be a source of light unto the world, no matter how much darkness we might see in it. And so it's meaningful that all of you are here to see this Torah scroll and to see Ari reading from this beautiful Torah scroll with its extraordinary history as well. And so after the service, when the service is concluded, we'll bring the Torah out once again. If you want to ask questions about the service, you want questions about the Torah, you're most welcome to come back up and we'll bring the Torah out and we will talk to you then. Until then, we're going to invite you to grab a seat and please return to your seats. And the cantor is going to be our first Torah reader this morning. And it's also a joy now to call forward for our first Aliyah to Torah. And by the way, for those of you, before we do that, I'm going to call forward Rabbi Pozlowski, who's going to introduce our Torah service, and she's going to give you the page number and tell you what book to read from.
In this week's Torah portion, Ki Teitzei, Moses shares a vast array of commandments with the community regarding family, animals, and property. Various civil and criminal laws are delineated, as well as laws of commerce on loans and fair business practices. The Parsha concludes with the commandment to remember the deeds of Amalek, who attacked the Israelites as they left Egypt. The verses that Ari will chant this morning can be found in the blue and white book, the Chumash, on page 848.
Once again, we are turning to page 848, and we're going to be reading from Deuteronomy chapter 23, beginning on verse 18. So join now to call forward dear grandma and aunts, to call forward Marion Berman, Tracy Guy Decker, and Diane Birkin. Tamdu Rachel Mina bat Yaakov v'Sprinza v'Tzvia Beryl bat Rachel v'Mina v'Penina bat Avraham v'Sara.
Baruch et Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Barach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Ata Adonai noten ha'Torah.
Amen. Lo tiyeh kadesha mi banot Yisrael. V'lo yiyeh kadesh mi b'nei Yisrael, lo tavi ethen zona umachir mikol beit Adonai Elohecha, lechol neder ki tuavot Adonai Elohecha gam shnehem.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam natar betokenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
And now as Ari takes hold of the yad, it is a joy to call upon Emily and Jamie, to the dear mother and father. Ya'amdu Esther from Baruch Mina, v'Yisrael ben Abraham v'Sarah.
Baruch hu et Adonai hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Leolam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai hamvorach leolam vaed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu michol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Lo tashich le'achicha neshech kesef, neshech ochel, neshech kol davar asher yishach. Lanachri tashich ulochicha lo tashich lema'an yivarechecha Adonai Elohecha bechol mishla yadecha al haaretz asher ata vashama l'rishta ki tidur neder l'Adonai Elohecha lo ta'acher l'shalmo ki tarosh yidreshenu Adonai Elohecha me imach v'chaya v'cha chetz.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam natan patokenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Beautiful Aliyah and Mazel Tov. And now if you come stand on my left side, I have the joy of calling forward Ari as he becomes bar mitzvah. Ya'amod, Ya'amod, Ya'amod ha-bar mitzvah. Ya'amod, Ari Chaim ben Yisrael Vester Froma hanechbad. It is with great joy and great fanfare that we call forward Ari Chaim Birken as he becomes bar mitzvah.
Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Leolam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim. V'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
V'chi Techtal lindor lo yevecha chet matza sifatecha tishmor ve'asita ka'asher nadarta l'Adonai Elohecha nedava asher dibarta bificha ki tavo becherem recha nachalta anavim kenefshecha shovecha ve'el kelyecha lo titein ki tavo bekamat recha ve'katavta mililot v'yadecha ve'chermesh lo tanif al kamat recha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
All right, Ari, take a deep breath, just like your mom just did. and turn to your left. Give your mom and dad and even your brother a big hug and a kiss. Because you deserve it, and they've earned it too. Ari, it's meaningful actually that your hand sort of got twisted up with the yod. Did you notice that?
No, I did that intentionally so the chain wouldn't get anywhere.
I mean, it's an amazing thing, but it means that you were connected, right? You're connected to the yod. And what does the yod do? And everybody can see it. It's the silver yod.
Yeah, it points.
It points, right?
Yeah.
It points the way. It points where you're reading from. But it also is a pointer that when you think about it, it's sort of pointing the way for us, pointing the way for the future. When you commit yourself to doing something like reading these ancient words and chanting them so beautifully as you did, in a sense, you're pointing the way for all of us. When you think about in your family is the fact that you are, a wonderful example for James. Hi, James. Isn't your brother an amazing example for you? The answer is yes. In so many ways, that is pointing the way. It's pointing the way to the future, not just from reading the Torah as beautifully as you've done, but also for integrating those words and those ideals into your heart, which is what we all have the opportunity to see. And it's an amazing feat to be able to lift the Torah so beautifully with your words and with your actions. And so never stop doing it. Never stop pointing the way for others. Never stop uplifting the Torah with your heart and with your actions. And then we know that you are going to continue to do wonderful and extraordinary things.
Bathroom's that way.
If anybody needs the bathroom, it's that way. And so now it's a joy to call upon those who are also going to uplift and bind our Torah scroll. It's a joy to call upon Tracy Guy Decker and DJ Guy Decker as they are going to come up to the Torah and lift and bind it. We are going to rise together as a community as we lift and bind our Sefer Torah.
וזאת התורה אשר שם משה לפני בני ישראל על פי אדוני ביד משה.
You may be seated, and now Ari is going to read the English translation of his Torah portion.
You shall not deduct interest from loans to your fellow Israelites, whether in money or food, or anything else that can be deducted as interest, but you may deduct interest from loans to foreigners. Do not deduct interest from your loans to your fellow Israelites, so that the Eternal your God may bless you in all your undertakings in the land that you are about to enter and possess. When you make a vow to the Eternal your God, do not put off fulfilling it, for the Eternal your God will require it of you, and you will have incurred guilt. Whereas you incur no guilt if you refrain from vowing. You must fulfill what has crossed your lips and perform what you have voluntarily vowed to the Eternal your God, having made the promise with your own mouth. When you enter a fellow Israelite's vineyard, you may eat as many grapes as you want until you are full, but you must not put any in your vessel. When you enter a fellow Israelite's field of standing grain, you may pluck ears with your hand, but you must not put a sickle to your neighbor's grain.
We are now going to turn to a second biblical reading that we do on Shabbat, known as the Haftorah. Haftorah, it comes from the section of the Bible known as the Prophets and can be found on page 857. That's page 857 in your Chumash, this thicker book. And it is meaningful that you're going to be reading, Ari, from Isaiah, and Isaiah was speaking compassionately to the people. This is actually one of our, what's called the Haftorot of consolation leading up to the high holidays. And it speaks words of consolement to try to allow the people who had experienced tragedy to feel better about their experiences, to feel closer and more connected to each other and to God. And one of the ways that we do that is to know that we have a society that's working towards making the world more compassionate for those who are vulnerable and in need, the widow, the hungry, the orphan within our midst. And so when we do that, and when we see young people who are trying to make the world a better place, then certainly we feel consoled that our society is taking the steps that are necessary to make the world a better place. So it's meaningful that Ari is going to be reading from Isaiah chapter 54, beginning on verse 1.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nvi'im tovim v'ratzah v'divrechem hane'emarim be'emet Baruch atah Adonai Chabocher b'Torah uv-Moshe Avdo uv-Yisrael Amo uv-Inviei ha'emet v'tzedek.
Amen.
Rani akara lo yalada Pitzachirina v'tzachali lo chala ki rabim b'nei shomei mach mi b'nei v'ula amar Adonai charechivi mekom ocholech v'riot mishkenotaich yatu al tachsochi cha'arichi Mitaraich v'tedotaich hazeki ki yamin u'samol tifrotzi v'zarech goyim yirash v'arim neshamot yoshivu. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam tzor b'chol ha'alamim tzadik b'chol hadorot ha'el ha'ne'eman ha'omer v'oseh ha'medaber u'mkayem shekol divran emet v'tzedek al ha'torah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al hanvi'im ve'al yom ha'shabbat hazeh shenatata lanu Adonai Eloheinu l'kedisha v'limenucha l'kavod ultifaret al chakol Adonai Eloheinu nachnu modim lach v'varechim otach yitbarach shemcha b'fi chol chai Tamid leolam va'ed Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat.
Amen. Yes. Nicely done, young man.
Yasher Koach. You did a wonderful work this morning. You chanted Haftarah beautifully. It was a joy to hear you and to know all of the hard work and dedication that went into this morning, shining clearly through. And it is a pleasure to call forward Diane Birken and James Birken to open our Ark doors. As we return our Sefer Torah to the Ark, we rise on page 256.
Behold, a good doctrine has been given unto you by Torah, forsaken not. For it is a tree of life to those who cling to it. Its ways are ways of pleasantness, and all its paths are peace.
Eitz Chaim hi lama chazikim ba v'tomecheha meushar Deracheha darchei noam v'chol netivoteha shalom. Hashivenu Adonai Elecha v'nashuva Chadesh Chadesh Yameinu Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem.
You may be seated. And now Ari has prepared these words on the occasion of his becoming a bar mitzvah.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
My Torah portion comes from Kitei Zeh, Deuteronomy 23, 20 through 26. It's a list of rules about economics, working for the future, and promises. Specifically, the portion says that you can't charge interest on loans to fellow Israelites, but you can do so for loans to foreigners. It also says to fulfill your promises to Adonai as quickly as possible, but you can refrain from making promises and avoid the guilt of not fulfilling them. Finally, the Torah portion tells us you can take as many grapes as you need at the moment from a fellow Israelite's vineyard, but you can't take more for later. It also says you can take grain from a fellow Israelite's field with your hands, but not with a sickle. The beginning and end of this Torah portion, the parts about loans and crops, can be summed up as basically, you can take what you need in the moment from another's resources, but you shall not take more for your own future. That will take away from the other person's future, his resources for their future. You are responsible for your future. The middle of the portion basically tells us, don't make promises you can't keep. Both of these summaries are warning against stealing from the future. You can't steal from other people's future by charging interest or taking more crops than you need. And you shouldn't steal from your own future by making promises that you can't keep. These are the laws of my Torah portion, but this is my bar mitzvah. Something about me has to be in here, right? Let's take a look at it from my point of view. What do I, nearly an official teenager, think about this portion? Well, with my nerdy mind, part of me started thinking about The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, and I found a few characters that at times show what these rules can mean. Smeagol, along with his friend, was fishing one day when Deagle was thrown into the water as a fish pulled him under. He let go of the line when he saw something shining in the mud, gold whispering at him. Deagle picked it up and made it to shore where Smeagol met him. Smeagol was also captured by the gold whispers. At just the sight of it, Smeagol urged Deagle to hand him the ring. Deagle refused, also captivated by its whispers. Then Smeagol strangled him and took the ring. Smeagol stole from Deagle's future. He stole the ring even though he didn't need it and took the life of Deagle just for it, filling his vessel with grapes and putting a sickle to Deagle's field of grain. And in turn, what he stole turned Smeagol into the infamous Gollum. Sam and Frodo journeyed with the One Ring in Frodo's possession to the one place that could destroy the ring, Mount Doom. Over time, Frodo grew more and more ill as the One Ring tried to corrupt him. When they were in the final reaches of Mount Doom, Frodo spoke about how the ring was almost going to corrupt him. Sam said to himself, I said I'd carry him if it broke my back, and I will. Then he said his famous line, Come, Mr. Frodo, I can't carry it for you, but I can carry you and it as well, showing how he made a promise to Frodo that he can keep and that he can succeed. Even in the book, it is shown that when carrying Frodo, it was not too much to bear, fulfilling the rule of completing vows that have crossed your lips. In the absence of a king, Denethor the steward took into play as the ruler of the kingdom of Gondor. But Sauron was attacking them. Boromir, one of his sons, had died. Trapped in grief, Denethor made his other child feel unworthy of his love. Faramir, to gain back his worthiness, went to fight an impossible battle that his father requested. When Faramir returned, barely alive, but indeed alive, his father refused to accept that his son lived. Trapped in grief, Denethor tried to burn Faramir's limp body. Denethor cost his son more than should have been taken. Denethor cost his son his own father's love and nearly his life. Like Israelites who charged interest to their family, Denethor takes more from Faramir than he should have. He robbed his son of so many things that are valued and in turn robbed himself. He broke the rule about not taking more from your family than needed. My Torah portion tells me to only take what I need from a vineyard and not to make promises I can't keep. I can't control other people, but I can control what I am and how I can help. Just like the Israelites who can control how they behave when lending money, making promises, and walking through grain fields and vineyards, the Torah portion doesn't promise that everything will be fair and tells you how to act to make the world a better place. I'm going to bring books to book deserts. For those who don't know what a book desert is, it's a place where there are few books, to help those learning to read and give them books to fill their minds with knowledge. It will be a way to add to people's futures instead of stealing from them. Sharing books is also a promise I can keep, and part of a future that I hope to build is one where I author the books that readers may read. Well, now I'm supposed to tell you what becoming a bar mitzvah means to me. Well, what it means to me is I am almost 13. I am growing with more responsibilities, both physically and spiritually. Twists and turns are ahead in my life, and I need to be ready to face them. Now, that is what this is all to me, something to look at, something to observe, something to learn from. Seriously, thank you for being here. Thank you, Cantor Perper and Sam, for teaching me. I wouldn't know what to do here if it weren't for you. Johnny, Arno, Elijah, Ben, and Harrison. And thank you for all the fun conversations we have. I enjoy every game and every talk. Mom, Dad, and James. Thank you all for the sparring, teasing, and goofiness that constantly happens around the Birken house. Thank you all, and Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Now it's a joy to call upon Emily and Jamie to come speak loving words and blessings to you. So come on over here, Ari. Way to go.
So you might be able to tell that Ari's a bit of a perfectionist, so I thought I'd talk a little bit about failure. Parts of the following have been shamelessly borrowed from Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. Tell me, the young man asked the guru, which is the path to success? The guru said nothing but pointed to a path nearby. The young man almost ran in his enthusiasm to follow the wise one's instructions. Minutes later came a loud splat. The young man reappeared, bedraggled and covered in mud. Convinced that he must have misunderstood the guru's advice, he asked the wise one once again, which is the path to success? Again, the guru pointed at the same direction. A second time, the young man set out, and again, there was a loud splat. This time, he reappeared before the guru, shaking with rage. Twice you have pointed to a path, and twice I fell into a muddy pit. This time, no more gestures. Speak. Tell me the path to success. The guru looked at the young man and said, success is that way. He added, just a little past splat. So written by Jerry Porras, Stuart Emery, and Mark Thompson. Ari and I went backpacking on Island Royale over the summer. I had been wanting to go there for over 20 years, and it was Ari's first backcountry trip. After arriving in the Rangers area and getting off the ferry, The ranger gave a rundown of the island to the 50 or so people that just left the ferry and used the words self-rescue about a half dozen times. Next, I let Ari pick the first campground. He picked a campground that was 7 miles away and about 1,000 feet of elevation change, but we had 8-ish hours to do it before things got dark. Not an insignificant hike, but no worse than what an overachieving dog walker might do in Appalachia. After trudging through a bumper crop of mosquitoes, higher than normal temperatures, many muddy false summits, and other majesties of nature, Ari became upset a mile or so before camp. I get it. He had never done backcountry camping before. He was just learning to read a topographical map and did not yet trust himself to interpret it correctly. All he knew, it was a long way back to the harbor. He had no idea how much further to the campsite, and then it began to rain. But we made it, and I'll never forget his reaction when we arrived. It was awesome watching Ari being pushed past what he thought he could do and then succeeding. The fear of failure and development of resilience is also in the Torah. I am not a man of words, said Moses when he was asked to lead the Israelites. I cannot speak, I am only a child, said Jeremiah when told to preach God's word. Moses, Elijah, Jeremiah, Jonah, and Job all received the point in their lives where they prayed to die. They felt they had failed, yet their lives inspire us still, centuries later. Failure is a teacher and a constant companion. If you don't fail, you run the risk of ending up like cough Gwyneth Paltrow, cough Scott Adams. In my own life, my undergraduate degree was, to put it mildly, challenging. I was reminded of this recently when cleaning out some old college notes. I opened a folder ready to go down memory lane, and the first thing I found was, "I don't even get what you're trying to do here," written by a professor in red ink. There's an expression, D for done, for a reason. Still, I think the resilience I developed helped me later in my career deal with a sky that was on fire, raining butane, and I was the one responsible for fixing it. Or much more articulately said by Theodore Roosevelt, the credit belongs to one who strives valiantly and errs often, because there's no effort without error or shortcoming. Even if such a person fails, he fails while daring greatly, so his place never shall be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat. Funny coincidence, Roosevelt was shot in Milwaukee while campaigning for president in 1912 and still gave a speech with a bullet lodged in his chest. I'm not joking. Go to 333 West Kilbourne if you want to see the history sign. Ari, as you work towards joining J.R.R. Tolkien, Rick Wardeen, and Tui Sutherland, please remember that some of the most celebrated authors have had many failures. Stephen King had 30 rejections, Dr. Seuss, 27 rejections, and Agatha Christie's first book was never published. Struggling is good. Failure is good. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other, and I'm sure you can do hard things. I love you, and I'm proud of you.
When Ari was 2 years old, he was speech delayed. He had 6 words that he used consistently: mom, dad, hi, bye, yes, and no. That is, unless he wanted to say something incisive and hilarious with maximum comic timing, like when his grandfather asked him what he thought of his newborn cousin Ruth, to which Ari replied, "She's a baby." When Grandpa Jim reminded him that he too was a baby, Ari responded with a withering, "I'm a man." Considering the inconsistent nature of his perfectly timed and pithy quips, our pediatrician referred us to the Purdue Early Speech and Language Program. We lived in Indiana at the time, where the evaluator asked Ari to play with some toy cars and dolls. Ari was content to put the dolls into the cars and take them back out again, and was uninterested when the evaluator tried to encourage him to create a narrative about the mom doll going to the doll grocery store to buy doll diapers and doll food. This apparently was a bad sign. I was informed that my child was engaging in primitive play rather than the more advanced pretend play they expected from a 2-year-old. I thought, but did not say, that maybe their going to the grocery store narrative was too boring for my child. I also thought, but did not say, how dare you describe my kid as primitive? Turns out, as Ari grew, my first thought has proved to be right. The 2-year-old who refused to pretend he was running errands has grown up to swallow long novels whole, create elaborate games about fighting mighty battles and saving the world, and writes stories with wild and wonderful ideas that flow out of him like water. Part of me would like to send a bound copy of Ari's most recent novel to the early speech and language program with the notation, "In your face, Purdue." Because the Purdue evaluator seemed to think she knew your story. She thought that looking at your beginning would tell her the middle of your story. Her mistake was not just in thinking she understood your story after a 45-minute interaction. It was also in assuming that our lives follow a clear narrative. A speech-delayed infant becomes a preschooler who struggles with language, who becomes an elementary student who doesn't like to read, who becomes a middle schooler who would never dream of writing a novel. Not only did she get your narrative wrong, but our lives also don't work as a narrative. Despite our attempts to fit our lives into a tidy structure that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, I've learned over the years that life is less like a linear narrative and more like a spiral, or, if you will, a scroll. Take today, for example. In some ways, it may seem like a beginning. You have become a bar mitzvah. You are now a man, and you have many joys, responsibilities, opportunities, and paths ahead of you. But today might also seem like an end. You've been studying and preparing for this day for years. You've learned Hebrew and attended classes and lessons and learned your Torah portion. You have, like pulling teeth, written a speech that is wonderful. But today is not a beginning or an end. It's a moment in your life, just as your Torah portion is just a moment in the Torah. It is this moment, and it is not gone when today is over. You will come back to this moment again and again as you look back on today. Sometimes you'll visit today with a sense of joy, sometimes with a sense of nostalgia, sometimes with embarrassment, and perhaps sometimes even with sorrow. But this moment will come back around again and again, just as your Torah portion will be read again and again as we learn from the Torah scroll anew each year. We like to refer to you as my mini-me. You and I share so many things. A sweet tooth, headaches when the weather changes, a tendency to be tough on ourselves, a passion for stories well told. But you are indubitably yourself, Ari Birken. The scroll of your life is tightly wound with mine right now, for which I am so grateful. But as you grow and become a man, it's inevitable that your life's path will spiral and turn in other directions, away from mine. It's my hope that as your life goes around, revisiting old moments and creating new ones, that you will recall this day, this important middle, as something vital and strengthening and joyful and sweet. May you follow interesting paths and find creative fodder for your imagination wherever you go. And I hope that you never lose your impeccable comedic timing.
Emily and Jamie, thank you for those beautiful words. And in moments in our tradition of beginnings, moments of endings, and particularly in moments in the middle, we say a blessing. And these are blessings that have been on the lips of parents from time immemorial, as parents have watched as young people have taken their place as an adult within our tradition. So Emily and Jamie, I'm going to ask that you rise. Ari and James, if you would rise as well. And Marion, if you would rise as well, and aunts and uncles and cousins who are here, family who are present, and friends who we call family and community, if you would stand as well, as together we are going to recite the Shehechianu.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kiyimanu v'higianu lazman hazeh.
Blessed are you, eternal our God, ruler of the universe, who has given us life, who has sustained us, and who has brought us to this very special moment today. And let us say, Amen. You may be seated. In your face, Purdue. What better blessing could there be? Ari, you are an extraordinary young man, and what you've done this morning is extraordinary. You've taken your place as a member of our community, and you've done it with poise, and you've done it with dignity, and it's a joy to watch you grow up. You know, from the moment you came to Congregation Shalom with your parents and your brother, you've enriched our community with the way that you approach the world with curiosity and thoughtfulness. It's really a joy to watch you grow. And Ari, did you know that our people have been referred to as the people of the book? Have you ever heard that expression? Yeah. Okay, well, that is what we're called, because we've always been captivated by the concept of story. From the hero's journey, tragic comedy, romance, mystery, all of these genres and many more can be found within the chapters of the writings of our people. And it's interesting then that your Torah portion, as you described, has very little narrative arc. But it's filled with rules, right? Of the 613 commandments, the rules that God gave throughout the 5 books of Moses, your Torah portion contains within it 72 different commandments, 72 different rules, more than almost any other portion of the Torah. And most of them can be summarized in one simple message: treat other people with dignity and respect and kindness, and be concerned with the well-being of the less fortunate. Now, maybe for someone who loves stories as much as you do, this might seem challenging to have a section of Torah so laden with rules, but I think it's just perfect, and here's why. What we're reading is the blueprint for heroics. You know, before we walked out here, your mom was telling me a little bit about your creative process, the fact that you actually put maps up on the wall when you were thinking about creating your stories. That's an extraordinary thing. But these blueprints that we have in this Torah portion is, in a sense, like mapping the human spirit, right? It is mapping the characteristics of what one should be. And just as you've written your first novel, and it's a remarkable accomplishment at your age, when you sit down to think about your characters, you invest life into them by thinking about their motivations. What makes them tick? What attributes will they have to make them heroes or villains? What will be their flaws and their strengths? What will make up their ethical core? Our people and those who accompany us on our journey are also on a hero's journey. There are many flaws, as the prophets pointed out, but there is also motivation to make the world a better place, to cling to principles, to help us along our journey to the promised land. When I think of you, Ari, I think of a young man who's taking his place among our people, and being a master of stories gives you a position of honor, because you understand that you are now a part of our people's story. Your story is linking to that of those who walk this world beside you, and through committing yourself to acts of loving kindness, like your mitzvah project, your motivations, and importantly, the example set for you, will accomplish wondrous things. Your parents are wonderful examples of what it means to reflect the best values of our people. Emily and Jamie are kind and thoughtful and caring people who are committed not only to your dear family, but also their greater community. I know that they make the world a better place by holding values that have been passed to them by their parents, and values that they're placing on yours and your brother's shoulders. A brother that, believe it or not, James, it's so fortunate to have a big brother setting a path and being a wonderful example. And in no time at all, you'll be up here too. Sometimes we peek at the last page of a book to make sure everything turns out all right. Have you ever done that? Have you ever peeked at the last pages of a book? To know that Frodo will ultimately toss the ring into Mount Doom, and all will be returned to a peaceful balance. It's not the last page, but I'm going to say it anyway. In our world, we don't always get to peek to know that everything's going to be all right. But like the Israelites, who in your portion are standing at the border looking into the promised land, we're being granted a vision of what's to come when we look at you. A young man who cares about his world, who uses his creativity to make it a better place, and who's showing that he believes in and carries forward the noble values of those who walked this earth before him. So I have a hope and a prayer for you. Wherever your hero's journey takes you, Ari, may you approach each step with the courage and thoughtfulness that you've shown today. For God has brought you to this moment. And may God ever keep you in good health, with much strength, with much joy, and that extraordinary creativity that will change the world. So let us now say Amen. And then, Ari, I've got the opportunity to say some words that are just for you to hear, and then Rabbi Pizlowski and Cantor and I will bless you.
יברכך אדוני וישמרך.
May God bless you and keep you.
יאר אדוני פניו אליך ויחונך. יישא אדוני פניו אליך וישם לך שלום.
May God always smile upon you, Ari, and bless you with God's choices of blessings. The blessing of wholeness, the blessing of shalom, the blessing of peace. Let us say, Amen. Well, now we are going to turn to the concluding sections of our service, and it's a joy to call upon Ruth Guy Decker and Brianna Strasser to step forward as they have the honor of opening up our ark doors. We are going to turn to page 282 in our Siddur, and we rise together. That's page 282 in the blue prayer book.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומולדים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
We now remain standing as we think of those who've passed into life eternal, and those who've lived and loved and whose light still shines upon us. Particularly in our hearts and minds, we think of Elaine Stoley, who passed this week, whose funeral will be taking place on Tuesday morning. We think of also Lona Ross and Joan Saperstein, for whom we mark the period of Shloshim. The period of Shiva. And then we think of Linda Hirsch and Ren Gollin and David Weber, for whom we mark the period of Shloshim. In addition to those names, so too do we think of those members of your dear family, Ari, who are still shining their light and their love down upon all of you like they did in life. We think of Jim Guy, Ruth Lipton, and Arnold Simon. May their memories be for a blessing. In addition to the names of our loved ones, so too do we think of all those who died due to war and our terrorism, all those who died in defense of this nation and allied nations' ideals. We think of all those who died due to the terrible virus of racism and xenophobia. And we think of all those who perished during the Holocaust. Our griefs and sympathies are mingled as we turn to words sanctified by memory, words glorified by hope. The Kaddish Yatom, the Mourner's Kaddish, can be found on page 294. That's page 294. Yit Gadal v'yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah, B'alma Divrach Hirutei v'amlich Malchutei, B'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala uvizman kari v'imru Amen, Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mivorach Le'olam Ulamei Almaya, Yit Barach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, V'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shmei dekudesha b'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tush bechata v'nechemata da'amiran bi'alma v'imru amen Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen Oseh shalom b'imromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the source of peace and peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. And let us say, Amen. You may be seated. In our tradition, we're always told to turn from sadness to joy. And as we learn that those who sow in tears shall reap in joy. And it's a joy now to call upon Rabbi Pozlowski, who's going to present you, Ari, with some gifts on behalf of our congregation.
Ari, it has been a joy to watch you lead us in prayer this morning with your poise and your assurance and confidence. It's been an absolute joy to watch you as you've grown on this journey over the past year as well. And in order to show just how excited we are for you to become an adult in our Jewish community, we have a few gifts that we would like to present you with. First is a certificate of you becoming bar mitzvah for you to mark this day and have to remember it by. We also have from the Women of Shalom a Kiddush cup that hopefully you will fill just as this day has been filled with sweetness. You will continue to fill this Kiddush cup with sweetness to remember Shabbat each and every week. And we also have a tzedakah box for you. And just as you fill the Kiddush cup with sweetness, we hope that you will fill this tzedakah box with money so that it will help those who are in need, so you can continue to do tzedakah and act out some of the principles that you learned from your Torah portion, to not steal from the futures of other people or yourself, but to indeed give to their future as well. And we also have, finally, a book for you called One People, Many Paths, A History of Jewish Milwaukee. And this book tells the history of the Jewish people here in Milwaukee, and I have no doubt that when they come out with their next edition, that we will find your name among its pages for all the great things that you have done. Mazal Tov, we are so proud of you.
Now, Ari, I'm going to invite you to stand over at the S tables, and your dear family can join you, as we are going to turn to our concluding hymn for this Shabbat, which is Siman Tov and Mazel Tov. Please rise.
Siman Tov Mazel Tov Mazel Tov Siman Tov Mazel Tov Mazel Tov Siman Tov Mazel Tov Siman Tov Yehelanu 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 Lechol Yisrael Semen tov u'mazel tov u'mazel tov v'semen tov. Semen tov u'mazel tov u'mazel tov v'semen tov. Semen tov u'mazel tov v'semen tov. Yelanu.
And now, Ari, if you would lift the Kiddush cup. Certainly our cups are overflowing with blessings on this beautiful morning. And let's recite a timeless blessing together.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen.
L'chaim. All right, very good. Not too much. And now we're going to take the cover off of the challah. And the challah is a symbol of sustenance, and just as it is braided, so too are our lives intertwined. Just as we draw sustenance from the bread, so too do we draw sustenance from each other. We lift up the challah now, so we recite this blessing as well.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz.
B'tei avon, everyone. You can take a small bite. Mazel tov to all of you. And I know that there's going to be the next section that is going to take place of celebration, because they say, Ein kemach, ein Torah, without sustenance, there is no Torah. But as we wait for the limo to arrive for young people, and as we wait to move to where the luncheon will be taking place, you have the opportunity to come and learn a little bit about Torah. We'll bring it out as well. Mazel tov, everyone. It's a joy to celebrate in these moments together. Shabbat shalom. All right, so if anybody has any questions about the service or about the Torah, about its writing, you're welcome to come up here and learn.
Hi.
Take some bread, yeah, absolutely.
Can I have some bread?
Yeah, of course you can.
Yeah.
Just take off. Are you allowed to have it?
Hello?
Grab it.
Oh.
Go on and grab it.
Me.
Shabbat shalom, everyone. This is your first time at a Jewish ceremony?
Yes.
Well,
She didn't
welcome.
come up
I'm
for
so glad you're here.
earlier since she didn't realize
I thought it was for kids. I didn't know.
There were
So
other
let me
adults.
tell you a little bit about the Torah. So the Torah is, each one is faithfully copied, one from one Torah scroll to the next, okay? And so there are remnants of scrolls that go back thousands of years, like the Dead Sea Scrolls. And a sofer, which is a scribe, what they'll do is they will write each of these sections of Torah, each letter, using a feather and ink. And everything on the Torah is completely organic. There's nothing that's synthetic on the Torah, right? So comes from animal skin. This is, the wood from a tree. There's just nothing that would be part of this process that isn't natural. It comes from the natural world.
Okay.
Each letter, you can see